We reached 7 o'clock, time of the meeting. We'll call it to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on our agenda is the preview approval of the agenda for this evening, item 3C. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I'd like to move item number 9G, donation of property by Mr. John Foster, up on the agenda since I see him in the audience, to 7A.
We would need the motion
Motion to be amended.
to be, amended to approval of the agenda as amended, and then I can move it.
I need another motion.
Yeah, to approve the amended motion with the amended.
I move
agenda.
to approve the agenda as amended, preview agenda as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We'll
Okay,
move.
give me just a minute to move it, please. Okay, if you'll refresh, it should be.
Is everybody refreshed and ready on that? Okay. Next item on the agenda is 5A, delegation recognitions, audience delegations, which...
We skipped the consent.
Consent.
Yeah, we gotta do consent.
Under consent.
Okay.
I make the motion we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
Was that Brittany? I'm sorry.
Nancy. Nancy. Any discussion? All in favor of approval of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Now we're ready for delegations, right?
Mhm.
Do we have an order, or do we?
Yes, we have Mr. Foster.
You're up, John. And as I said, each person will have 3 minutes. Susan will keep track of time.
Thank you so much for respecting an old wildcat. And congratulations to this board on the result of your presentation and the results you had at the poll. You need to be congratulated. I was asked by a former teacher of this district if I would consider donating the retainage basin and on Megan Street, that is 100 yards south of the elementary school, for a outdoor classroom. I never gave it much thought for several months, and then I was approached by someone else that told me, that might make a good outdoor classroom. I know that the district tried to build an outdoor classroom on the northeast side of the elementary school about 18 years ago. I went over and excavated out for the, quote, pond, and when we got it excavated out, we was down to solid rock, and it never did hold water, and I don't know what has happened to that classroom, whether it's being used now or not, since the 9/11 thing and the 08 thing. Why management has changed an awful lot. So, but anyhow, this piece of property is an acre and a half of ground. It is designed as stormwater management, and that was a federal law that came into effect about 4 or 5 decades ago, and the city of Hurstonville made the decision that each subdivision would work that out on their own. So that's the reason that that retainage basin is there. It's 23 years old. It was well built. It is rip-wrapped. The deepest point in it is about 42 inches. And the shallow, of course, is 0. It functions well as a water retention basin. There's 3 different subdivisions that drain into it. One of them is undeveloped, but it's on the drawing board that it is to be developed. So it manages roughly 20 acres of drainage. And it is landscaped, has about 50 trees on it, 11 different varieties, for what little bit I know about tree varieties. It has areas for more trees to be planted. And when I noticed that we had set out an orchard at the elementary school, it entered my mind that maybe we could have some more. So
John, you've hit your 3 minutes.
I'm up, huh?
Yep, you're out.
Okay.
What do you want us to consider, real quick?
Well, one thing I considered as a gift to the school district if you'd want it.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Who's next?
Mr. Osmer?
Thank you. My name is Wilson Osmer. I'm a product of Cass County. I'm a graduate of Archie High School, and I've been a resident of Harrisonville for the last 30-some years, and I'm a retired lieutenant colonel out of the United States Army. What I want to do is I'm trying to partnership with the Cass County Career Centers. As you guys know, there's those kids that may not plan on going to college that wants a career to go out to be electrician, plumbers, and that stuff. And as you know, the Cass County Career Center serves several different schools in this area, Archie, Adrian, several schools. So a lot of kids go there looking maybe to get a career into the construction industry. As I stated earlier in my proposal, I don't know if you guys have my proposal that I gave online to Ms. Booker. Like you said, you have, I've talked to some business people, and I've talked to some of the electricians. I use an electrician, his name is Mr. Hebb. He's here tonight, he's 84 years old. And he has a wealth of knowledge that'd be willing to assist with some of these kids that want to actually learn how to do electrician in houses. Now, I know the Cass Career Center right now currently do cabinets or I guess they build little small homes and stuff, and they take them, or people buy them and then take them to the lake home stuff. But I always like to use examples of, you know, like working on go-karts and mini cars, why not work on the real actual houses and show these kids that get real world experience. So what I want to do is that I have 5 lots that I think would be that are close to the schools, and I want to enhance the Cass County Career. So I know they have a program, so I want to enhance it so we're giving real work experience. So these kids that when they leave this Cass, they'll actually know how to work house from the ground up, the electrical, the plumbing, and I've kind of done some remodeling myself stuff. I've even remodeled a little shed cabin, but as we know, but if some of these kids that are not planning on going to college, here you have lots that didn't get hands-on experience, and then you have, I think, businesses that would be interested in assisting with the Cass County Career Centers and teaching these kids, and and like I said, you got guys like Mr. Hell, he's 84, and I still use him, so he's 84 years old. And then you have Mr. Foster, he's 80. So these guys got a lot of wealth of knowledge, and I wouldn't mind sharing that knowledge, because once they're gone, then then you got then you have, and like I said, not only that, I think that I've been here for like 30-some years, and I think there's probably, I have a hard time finding qualified experience. Somebody's not going to take advantage of me when I call an electrician or plumber or whoever and stuff. So I think with the amount of kids that are graduating from these areas, you would think there would be a lot more people out there in this industry and stuff. But needless to say, that I was hoping that with this type of project, that that it's a partnership. I want a community.
There's your 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay, all right. Again, thank you for your guys' time and stuff.
Thank you.
And we have Mr. Help.
Basically, I'm just here to support the Osmers. I have some history in this. I was managed the boys when they were building houses here at one time. I don't know how effective that was for making money or what it cost the school district, but it turned out really well. They turned out some boys that went into a career in carpentry. And I was only familiar with the house building. I know there's other parts of this career center, but what it looks to me like that if it would work, it needs to get started again, for the reasons that Mr. Osmer was stating. I managed the electrical part of it, led the boys. They did hands-on work in the electrical part of it. Don't remember if I got paid anything for that or not. As I recall, I don't think I did. And I also have some, I've done some work in teaching, and I've managed my own school, electrical school. And it turned out 2 boys that were management people for the Archie School, and the superintendent paid their tuition. I've also turned out some other boys that became electricians. So anyway, that's where I stand on it. I think the future needs more electricians, more plumbers. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Sir.
And Mrs. Osmer.
Good evening. I'm Karen Osmer, and I have lived here all my life. Graduate of Harrisonville High School, and still proud to see that I think Harrisonville ranks in the top 20% of public high schools. So I just want to say that kind of what my husband was saying, that kind of give you kind of a, not to say the houses would look like this, but the land is on Pine Street, which is probably just a 3-minute little car drive from the high school. And so the lots are here, and then like say if you were to build homes like this, and just kind of thinking that, ahead of the game, there's a need, I know also for low senior housing. We had that great one now on Jefferson Parkway. But I know when someone was coming down here looking for something personally, the list on that one's like a 2 or 3 year waiting list just to get in on there. So if you had, students that were actually building, whether it was something like that or something that this would be something that they could learn skills from. I know my husband has talked to the mayor and different ones, so I think we could get community involved in it and helping. And of course, this wouldn't be a cost to the career center; it would just be them learning skills, like we said. So I'm just hoping that the board would entertain and helping us talk with. I can't think of my husband has talked with the lady who's kind of over the career, and it's kind of, if you could kind of give us a cheerleader with her and thank her. Is she there? Okay. Oh, hi. Okay. And so that I think that, like you said, it was started once, and maybe we could get it started back up again. I think it would just be another asset to say what type of school district that we are. That's it for me.
Thank you very much.
That's all.
That's it?
Mhm.
Okay. That concludes the public participation. The next item is 5B, 2020 retiree recognition.
So we have 2 retirees with us this evening, and we didn't typically we recognize our retirees at our end of year banquet, but we didn't get to do that this year. So our presentation. So we've invited Pam and Jenny to come tonight. So if they would come forward, we will. Now be careful and support the bottom of it because it, yeah, that bell. Sad that we have to do that.
Oh.
And if Susan, if Doug wants to mention.
So, we greatly
You're right behind Paul. No, but it's-
Stay right here.
Thank you.
Come on over. We appreciate both of you. Not that you're retiring, but that you have been able to serve and be part of our family for all these years.
Thank
And you will be missed.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, at this point, we'll move to item 5C, recognition. Volunteer of the Year.
Yep. Okay. So he's not going to want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. So.
Mention that, yeah, if they want to head on out.
Yeah, we'll let Pam know. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So other recognitions that over the last 6 weeks or so, we've had several recognitions for our annual award winners. And we've tried to do social distancing in our award presentations. We had our Educator of the Year, who was Chandra Kelly, at the Criminal Justice CSI teacher at our Cass Career Center, and Chandra does a terrific job, and we did a little parade for her, and we had our Support Staff Employee of the Year, Jace Hillbrandt, which is the nurse at McEwen. We did a little parade for her. Our Outstanding Community Involvement Award winner was Roseanne Bostic, and we went to Roseanne's house and woke her up in the morning. So, Roseanne's a paraprofessional at ECC. So tonight we want to recognize our final award winner, which is our Volunteer of the Year. And our Volunteer of the Year is actually a group who helped us tremendously, more than we can even say. So our recipient of our Volunteer of the Year is the All In for Our Students Committee. And I'm going to ask Marcy Baumel, and she told me she was going to be mad at me, but I'm making her come up anyway. So we want to have Marcy come up, and we're going to give her that.
I told you
Marcy volunteered when nobody else would step forward, and Marcy said, I'll do it. And Marcy is very involved in this process, the governance process, the board process, and she always is keeping an eye on us, which is good. We need that. But she did a great job of stepping forward as a leader. And we had other people, too, that stepped forward, too. So, see my list. I want to make sure I recognize
I
everybody.
didn't do this by myself.
It was a group.
It was a joint group effort, and it was not the best thing.
So Daryl Shelton was the official treasurer, but Betty Catron was his assistant. They both took care of the financial side. And if you haven't ever done a campaign, it was a tremendous effort. You got to meet the deadlines for the ethics committee and all that stuff. And they did a tremendous job. Let's see, we had Vanessa Hargrave did a lot of the marketing stuff, and she was heavily involved in that process. Ed and Gail Roberts, they're tremendous advocates for the Harrisonville School District. So those are just a few of the members who helped serve on the volunteer committee. It is a volunteer committee, all labor of love, and I think the benefits will help our children and our teachers for years to come in Harrisonville. Yes. So thank you very much.
Okay, next will be item 6A, communications, donation acknowledgement.
So per board policy KH, the administration hereby reports to the Board of Education the receipt of a donation of 3,500 masks from an anonymous Harrisonville alumni. The district is extremely grateful for this generous donation. It is very, very generous. Those masks are expensive. All the products that are used to keep our staff and students safe, those layers of protection, and so it's nice. A really very nice donation from an anonymous Harrisonville.
The N95 type mask.
No, they're just they're the
Paper.
the
Medical.
vapor. Yeah,
the
yeah.
medical,
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Finding that many is a challenge.
Right.
Okay. Item 6B, federal and state programs.
So this is just a memo outlining the consolidated federal programs. As I mentioned, we had our federal programs review committee, and this kind of talks about the particulars of the budget, the allocations for those different funds. So.
Anybody have any questions for that? Item 6C, federal and state programs, special education programs.
This was prepared by Annie, by Mrs. Knox. She did a great job, and she does a good job working with Kathy and preparing the budgets for 2021. Again, kind of gives you an outline of where we're at for our IDEA allocations.
Very good. Item 6D, monthly information items. Kathy, anything you want to share with us?
Not on those, unless
Okay.
anybody has a question on any of those.
Okay.
That's our detail reports.
Any questions for that? Moving on to item 7A, which is or AAA, which would be the item we moved up the agenda, donation of property. The chair would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the donation of property as described from John Foster.
Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion on this topic.
I would just mention that in talking with the administration and maintenance, we just have some concerns about the maintenance of the property. From our end, we do have an outdoor classroom on the north end of HES currently. We have difficult time maintaining that. There's a fence line along there that we have some concerns with maintaining frequently. I'm a little concerned about water and kids and the liability. But I greatly appreciate it and understand the educational value of it, and John does a lot for our school and our community, and I understand that side of it too. But I have some reservations about it. So.
Do we have to, or have we heard anything from like our insurance, or have we had a chance to talk to any council of, say, what's our potential liability exposure?
No, and the only thing I can compare it to, we have a retention pond to the northeast of the stadium there, and that does not hold water. It's a little different type of retention pond. It doesn't hold water. There are restrictions on the type of fencing that you have to have around that, and so I can't. Jason, you might be able to. Is that what type? Is that taller fencing? Is that 8-foot fence?
I think it's all 8 foot around there.
And that's my concern, is that the fence, we'd have to fence that to that 8-foot fence, I think. But
Very expensive.
that,
So do we need a little more time to look into some of our options?
I would appreciate that, so we can talk to our insurance, definitely.
So that we don't have to accept it at this time. We can look into a few things and get
Do a
with
little more
him.
homework.
But, personally, I just feel like we should check into a few of these things before we accept it. I like the idea of it. It's not anything against that, and it's always nice, like you said, if somebody supportive of our schools. But we gotta think about the transfer of liability and then the maintenance, and if we've got to fence that, and
And it would be an
with new information.
unsupervised location most of the time.
Right.
So, and I don't,
And, you know, and then, I mean, with, like they said, with the governor announcing withholding other fund, it's just a little bit of uncertainty in a few things. But I personally feel like we need a little more time to look into some things. So I would like, I mean, I guess we got a motion to
We need
accept
to
it.
amend the motion to table it.
I would propose that we
reconsider?
do so, and I'd like to find out a little more information on it. Not against it. I just think we need to have a little more time to look into
And then
it.
if Mr. Foster had stayed, we've been able to ask him some questions too. So, okay, I will amend my motion then to table this for 3 months. And bring it back up. Time for us to research different options and ask more questions.
Do we have to second that amended, or does
You
he?
wanna second the amended?
Yes.
so we have an amended motion to table this action for 3 months. Revisit then gives us time to do some research, some homework,
Yeah.
that type of thing. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We'll table that then for 90 days. Okay. Item 7A, assessment and evaluation of district programs. How's that, Kathy? Now you're up.
Through May, our current property taxes and are netting out between the current and the delinquent to right on budget. So we're looking good on current property taxes. Delinquent taxes are exceeding budget by quite a bit. We've got a lot of people that apparently are trying to get their cars licensed and evade their taxes. So, or some of it's probably just,
So there's more tax revenue coming in there than
yes,
we were, oh, okay.
right.
Well, but it makes up for the low side on the
Yes,
on the
on
actual
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
on time payments. So.
Right. So, yeah, we're not seeing a gain.
Okay.
Balances.
State formula dollars, of course, as Paul mentioned, are falling under budget. But we did get the CARES Act grant money, which was about $247,000, which helped backfill our May payment. Prop C sales tax is going to come in with just a small negative shortfall or variance. Those, as I said last month, run about 2 months behind, so we're going to be okay through the end of this year. Classroom trust money, we got none this year because this month because the casinos are closed down. So we got no monies. Overall, Fund 1 revenues exceed budget by about 3%. Fund 2 revenues see a shortfall of about 3%, so we're netting out to zero. Expenditures are routine and all categories fall under budget for the month of May. So we're going to see some savings through the month of June. Our ended projected fund balance at the end of May is about 39%, and our total cash and investments are $11.7 million.
Anybody have any questions for Kathy? Thank you very much. Item 7B, strategic plan update.
Well, as you know, part of our strategic plan that's been a big focus of the last few months has been the fiscal responsibility. So that's probably the area that we spent a lot of time on, and seems to consume a lot of our time. I would also point out, and this kind of ties in with the next item on the agenda, is our task force update. So the two kind of go together, and the fact that our task force, a lot of what they're dealing with is the academic preparation for our students and how we can improve those options that are available for our students in the fall who wish to attend virtually. And so, we've spent a lot of time discovering ways to make that experience better for those students. Because I think frankly across the country we've heard a lot of concerns from parents about virtual education and how that was presented. But we asked a lot of our teachers when we said, "Hey, you've got a week to prepare to do this," and we weren't ready. I don't think anybody was ready for that. And so we have the framework for some plans in place to make our academic instruction better and to offer some choice virtually for people who feel unsafe attending in person. So I think that addresses those strategic that strategic plan piece. So those are really, and then we, of course, one of our pillars of our strategic plan is to attract and retain high quality staff, and our base raise and our raise that we offered to our staff was significant, and I had a lot of staff express their appreciation, and I think that'll go a long ways to helping that foundation of that piece of the strategic plan. So we really are; those are the three areas that we're focusing on with the strategic plan.
Anybody have any questions for Paul on that?
On the task force, have they come up with, like, there's going to be 4 different scenarios or 3 different possibilities, or
Item 7C is task force update.
Okay, we'll go right to that. Then that's fine. That's
D.
good.
Okay,
Yep,
all right, I'm
we'll
sorry.
go right
I
to
thought
that.
we
So
blended them up.
the task force, and we met for 3 weeks. Is that right? And then we took we took this week off, and next week, just assuming a lot of people are on vacation. So, but primarily what the task force is doing is exploring ways that we're hoping for the best and planning for the worst, in essence. And so we're trying to make it as the least impactful on families as possible. In other words, you hear initially you heard a lot about people talking about we want an A day and a B day to spread kids out. Well, really, that's not feasible with families because a lot of times both parents work, or sometimes a lot of our students come from single family or single parent homes. So that's really not feasible for those families. So we have to try and meet the needs of our community. And so what we are working on is developing a plan where within that framework that we create the social distancing in our own environment. So we're talking about pathways in the buildings themselves, talking about what will masks look like, and trying to follow the recommendations from medical from the medical advice that we receive. And there's a really good report out, I think it came out today or yesterday, from American Pediatric Association that talked about masks in certain age of kids. And so we take into consideration all of those things, the different resources that we are provided, and try to incorporate that into what we're going to plan for. So we are planning on having school on August 24th. We will have. We're planning on in-person school on August 24th. We are planning to have layers of protection in place. The details of those layers of protection will be provided to the board at the July meeting. That'll be the presentation where we say this is what we would like for layers of protection. And we are we had a survey that went out to our staff. We're going to follow up with another survey specifically that has a discussion of who is concerned about coming to school and those. And what those concerns specifically are, and how we can try to accommodate those needs. So we will also survey the community to find out the needs of our community. And so, a lot of schools were doing that back in May. Well, things have changed since May, right? Now we're seeing a different view about masks and what that's going to look like, and we're seeing an uptick in the number of cases, and of course, there's 1,000 different opinions out there, so we're trying to filter through all of those things. And we have a really good group of people, I think, and we have broken it down into subgroups that are looking at, one group looks at the health side of it, and we're talking about physical health, and we're talking about social emotional health of students. And staff, not just students, but staff as well. And then we have another group that's trying to address the academic side, and how we can improve the academic presentation for specifically kids that want to attend virtually. So we are going to have a virtual option for kids and families who have health concerns. And then the third group is talking about more of the specifics of the facilities and transportation and those concerns. So, and Jason's leading that group. So, so we have 3 subcommittees within that group and addressing those specific topics. And again, we're talking about those layers of protection and understanding that we're not going to prevent everything. We're not going to prevent the spread of coronavirus. We don't have those capabilities. But if we can offer as many layers of protection as we can for our staff and our students so that they can feel safe, then we're going to do that. And understand that some won't feel safe, and we want to be able to provide a quality education for those students as well. And that's the priorities that we're focusing on right now.
Are we more comfortable with the virtual platform? Obviously, we are versus where we were in April.
Right. Yes.
So we're comfortable we can have a quality product to address those issues.
Correct. And part of that concern too is so we have some resources now that we can utilize better, but also making sure that we're streamlined for families so that we're not doing 3 different things with 3 different buildings, because a lot of times we have parents who have kids in 3 different buildings or 2 different buildings. And if they're doing different things, it makes it very difficult for a parent. If I come home from work and now I have to help with the education of my children, and I don't understand the nuances of these 2 different programs, so we're trying to streamline things and make it as consistent as possible. And so yes, we also have to take into consideration our staff. So if we have a teacher who has 10 kids in their classroom, but then they have 10 kids virtually, our expectation can't be, okay, well, you've got to teach these 10 kids, and after that, you've got to go home and teach these 10 other kids. That's too much required of our staff. And so trying to figure out a way that we can provide that virtual education with our existing staff and making it equitable so that they're not wearing themselves out either, and but making ourselves available to parents and families too. So there's a lot of considerations to take into it.
When you talk about layers of protection, is that like the face shields maybe for the teachers?
It's an option, right? That's an option that we talked about. So you're talking about masks. You're talking about hand washing techniques. How often do you wash your hands? So if I take my class in, and do I take them every hour? That's one layer of protection. We've talked about middle school doing alternating bells with 6th, 7th, and 8th so that they're not filling the hallways with kids at the same time. Talking about pathways, so kids are walking in one direction, and again, trying to reduce the amount of contact. So we talk a lot about what the medical profession is telling us is that prolonged exposure to someone is essentially within a 6-foot radius, 3 to 6. Now they're talking about 3 to 6 foot radius. For 15, 20, 30 minutes, and that's considered prolonged. So when they do the contact tracing, we have to be available for the contact tracing for students or staff when they test positive, and so that's who we have to identify. So trying to make sure that we can spread that out as much as possible. So it'd be great if we could say we're going to follow CDC guidelines 100%. But realistically, we can't do that. I mean, no school in America can follow this, especially the busing guidelines of alternating every other seat. We would put 7 kids on a 70-passenger bus. We just can't do that. So, and we wouldn't get them all to school on time. And there's just so the layers of protection include what do we do for transportation, what do we do for passing periods, masks, face shields, all those different items. So there's several items.
Coming back to the face shields, my mind just goes out there because I'm thinking that we could make those ourselves. Don't we have 3D printers and maybe
if we can get the resources?
Those would be resources that could be reimbursed from the county money.
So
there's no expense to the district.
We have used county money for part of our the hand sanitizer. We bought bulk hand sanitizer. We bought some masks. There is some money left, and face shields is one thing we talked about today, and how quickly we can get them, and those type of things. So
Kids can make their own.
sometimes some of them could.
Another question for Paul on the task force. No easy answers and a lot of challenges.
No, and I think it's fairly. We're going to be consistent with kids as much as possible. It's going to be where it's going to be difficult is the most vulnerable population is our staff, and we just have to communicate that as much as possible to our families so that they understand our staff are vulnerable. They're of the age that they're vulnerable. How do we protect them? So we do have, our survey indicates we do have a fair amount of staff members who are concerned, and so how do we provide protections, layer protections for them? There may be cases where we ask, for example, secondary students, this class you're going to have to wear a mask, and if you informing families if you can't do that, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, then either we can find you a different teacher, or we'll have to do a different program, or maybe you'll have to do virtual for that. So, but just we have to offer layers of protection for our staff and their families too. So, but if that comes through choice a lot of the time.
Very good. Any other questions? Move on to item 7D, 2020 lunch prices. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the breakfast, lunch, and adult meal prices for the 2021 school year as presented.
Second.
Second.
Discussion on this? Questions? Anything?
Just to let you know, so the USDA, it's probably been at least 10 years. I'd like to say it's only 5 years, but I think I've probably been doing this 10 years. So, the price equity tool is a device that was developed by the USDA and sent to us by DESE, and it essentially tells you what you have to charge for your meals. And how this came about is schools across the country did not charge enough for paid lunches. They were using the reimbursement on unpaid lunches. Or not unpaid. They were using the reimbursement on free and reduced lunches because the federal government would set that free and reduced amount so high that it would subsidize the amount for your paid lunches. And it went on for years, and finally USDA said you can't do that anymore. And so they came up with this price equity tool that tells you how close that balance is. And so, as you can see, our price equity tool said we needed to go up 14 cents, but they cap it at 10 cents is the maximum they tell you to go up each year. So, so that's where that recommendation comes from.
Any other questions? Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Item 7E, appointment of Harrisonville Public School Foundation trustee. Do we have a motion?
I move to appoint Christy Fisher as first preference, Rex Bear as second preference, and Gina Smith as third preference to serve as trustee for the Harrisonville Public School Foundation.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? Questions?
I would personally like to see Gina number one, but that's okay. That's my personal preference.
Gina spends all her time in Florida. Any other questions? Discussions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 7F, appointment of a board members to serve on the committee to interview construction manager at risk. We have a motion.
I move to appoint Nancy and Doug Alexander to serve on the committee to interview construction manager at risk.
Motion, do we have a second?
I second that.
Seconds.
And we can go up to 3 without having a quorum. So I'd like to have a third person on that committee.
Thoughts on that? Do we overload it? We get too many people on it or not enough people on it? What do you think, Paul? Don't put you on the spot for a moment there.
Really, it doesn't. You throw a lot of cooks in the pot when you start doing that, but it doesn't really make a difference
Okay.
to me.
And then you've always got another person there in case somebody can't make it.
Well, the interview process is going to be one day, so it's going to be. We're not going to.
This is just to interview the applicants for the contract construction manager. It's not the ongoing project.
So then there's going to be a separate committee for that.
I would imagine it'd be board participation with that, with you, or
Well, if you want to attend the construction meetings, then that's different. That's getting into the weeds. I'm just going to say it.
Well-
I've done a lot of construction. I'm not at a board.
I'm not volunteering for that piece, so.
I guess on that too, though, if somebody wants to come up, they can come up and listen. We just have narrowed the scope of the folks to vote or actually participate right there, right?
Well, it would stand, I would think, yes.
The board will vote on it all together.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. Got a motion, a second, we good with that? For this stage of the project? The discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Item 7G, Regional Mitigation Plan.
What is this?
So
I
you
read it
can
and I
get
still don't know.
so you can get FEMA money. Let's say that you want to build a FEMA shelter. You have to be part of mitigation. So it's a collaborative group that you have to put on part of that.
So do we craft all that verbiage ourselves, or do we pirate off of somebody else? And
Jason goes to those meetings.
You
I
need
make
your
him
motion
go.
first before we discuss, or
No, you don't
want to
have
discuss
to.
it?
You don't
Okay.
have to.
I got assigned this lovely task, so went to about four meetings or so. They are regional. It was kind of eye opening, but the schools are very, very minor part of this. But they need our resolutions to go into the regional so that the region can show we have all these people as part of this for the region to get more resources such as that. Now I will say I haven't been on for a while. It's been in draft form, but the website is pretty interesting, and especially with the floodplains and that kind of stuff. So I went to 4 or 5 meetings, and there was different people all the time. Sometimes Harrisville would have some city people and county people, and sometimes not. It was just a variety. Some of the schools were represented, some were not. But whether schools are represented or not, they kind of give you some of the information that goes into that plan. It's pretty basic. It's not, ours, now we will do some work with it through the bonding. There's some things that are in there, and some of the work that we've done with the entrances, secure entrances, and that kind of stuff. But really what they're looking at is regional grant
To
money.
develop
And
a plan.
we're just a small, every school district is just a portion, then every city, and then these counties.
But it's a plan for FEMA if there's an emergency? Is that what it is? A response plan? I mean, what is this plan for? I guess I'd like to know.
Correct. Yes, there's some information in there where they're grant funded, I believe. So I think you have turnover of people and doing all kinds of different things coming through.
It's proactive to help. Like
It allows them to
tornado
file a
shelter.
grant if they
Like
have
if
issues.
somebody wanted to use the school, for instance, is that a part of it, using the district for
You
something?
could if you were, in essence, if you were going to build a FEMA shelter. We would talk about some of those things. So.
Okay.
But those things, very little of the conversation was around schools.
Yeah.
Very, very little. What my takeaway was, we're a piece. They need our resolution showing that we're a part of this county, so that county-wide they can develop this and say all of these entities are a part of it.
It allows for federal money to flow through. Essentially, you have to have it in place so you can have the federal money flow through.
And they update this resolution. I don't know how many years ago was that, Susan? 3 years, probably every 3 years. So it has been updated. The board did it before, so.
Okay,
Now that we have a better understanding of
sure.
what we're looking at,
Mhm.
Chair would entertain a motion, and this will be a roll call vote. So,
I move to approve the resolution to adopt the regional multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan as presented.
Second.
motion and a second. Any discussion amongst the board? Or have we got all we need to
I
know?
think we've beat it to death.
Okay. Susan?
Nancy,
Yes.
Brittany. Yes. Doug,
Yes.
Cameron,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Bing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Item 7H is an LJ Hart presentation. This is an information presentation. So, to you or to them? Who?
Turn
Flip
to
a coin?
them. So again, we've got Larry Hart and Brad Wegerman and Dr. Townsend here.
Killing
today
trees
to
again. Thank you.
talk to us about bonding. It's exciting stuff.
Thanks, sir.
There's all kinds of good news. This weekend.
We want to start off similar to some of your other presenters tonight by congratulating the board and all the committee work people who worked hard to achieve that success. In the booklet is a loose handout with the election results of both the levy and the bond issue. The bond issue was 66% approval, almost 2-to-1. And the levy had, I think, a 55% with about a 25% turnout. That turnout on a statewide basis was probably 6 or 7% higher than most of our clients throughout the state. So you apparently definitely had a strong get out the vote effort. I think I noticed on the absentee ballots it was 2-for-1, yes versus no, so that came in handy. So your committee seemed to be very engaged, and they knew what they were doing, and the results are good. And we're really wanting to congratulate all of you for that success. Tonight, Dr. Townsend and Brad will go through the numbers. Our purpose, since you haven't done a bond issue for a while, is to make you comfortable with the process. And we won't go into endless detail, but if there's something that just doesn't seem right in your mind, go ahead and probe it. I'm looking at Ms. Shelton, that would be anyone who would want to ask more questions. I would emphasize that I've been in the business a while, and this is the best bond market for issuers in my whole career. So it's definitely an issuer's market, and that's going to present an opportunity to offer your bonds with reoffering premiums, which will boost the amount of money available for the projects in case the bids come in higher than the estimates, or if there's an alternate that you want and you just can't quite make the original money there. This will come in handy. We'll explain that and try and answer your questions, and that's going to involve splitting the $22,700,000 into 3 issues. One would be hopefully at your July 28th meeting, the first $10 million, and then the second one would be in 2021 for another $10 million, and that's the maximum we can issue and have it be bank qualified. Now, bank qualified gives you a 10 to 15 basis point theoretical lower rate of interest than if it's non-bank qualified. These would be callable in 5 years. The first one would be callable in March of 25, which is about just a little over 4.5 years. And that would facilitate refundings to recover from the higher interest rate that picked up the premiums for the project. So those are things we're going to review. If you would pull out from your loose handouts, this is the interest rate movement chart, and that's my speaking part before I turn it over to Wesley and Brad. Exhibit A, what we're tracking here is the 10-year U.S. Treasury note, and I think I've gone into this at some of your earlier meetings, but the 10-year Treasury note is the barometer that the municipal bond market relies on for when you say, well, how's the bond market? If you said, how's the stock market, you might refer to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is just 30 stocks, or the S&P 500. But for the bond market, we typically use the U.S. Treasury note, and it's the 10-year note. And Exhibit A, I don't know, do we have that? We don't. I'm sorry. You each have the one.
Yes, everybody has paper.
Their paper. So okay. So that's what I'm using, and this first one goes from January 2018 through June 30th of 2020. And you can see how that tracks. In 2018, there were 4 times when the Federal Reserve Bank raised the rate by 0.25%. And you can see the minimal impact that had. Then in the yellow rectangles, in 2019 is when they started lowering the rates 0.25%. In the very bottom is where they had significant drops with the COVID and the Fed wanting to be more aggressive in propping up the economy. So we're down to now where the federal funds rate is 0.25%, almost zero. The Exhibit B illustrates the last 60-year average for that 10-year note. And it was 0.634, I think it closed at yesterday. So it's about 10 cents or 11 cents on the dollar for the average of the last 60 years. That's the market we're selling into for the benefit of the Harrisonville School District. So that's really powerful. The next two, Exhibit C, was just to illustrate Brexit was when the voters in the United Kingdom voted to leave the common market in June of 2016. Then the market went down to 1.37%, which was the previous low till the market we have right now. So we're less than half of what Brexit was, which was an all-time low at that moment. And then the presidential election is illustrated on Exhibit C as well, how the rates climbed shortly thereafter. In Exhibit D, we have the note tracking just since January 1 of this year. So you can see that it's pretty level right now, and we're expecting that to continue. Do you have any questions about the market environment? It's what it means is we're selling very low interest rates, and it gives us the opportunity to sell bonds and produce extra money for your project without altering the levy that would be needed to support it, and giving the district the ability to reverse that with a refinancing within 5 years that will save, Brad will cover that, but upwards of $4 million potentially. So,
I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
If the percentage is so low on the return for people or companies or whoever
Yes.
are buying these bonds, let me just ask you this. what is the pool of people that are going to buy bonds when the return is 0.25 or whatever it is?
It's a very good question. And
Thank you.
Very,
I wouldn't buy it. I'm just saying.
well, and I don't particularly want to buy them myself
So
with money.
who buys them?
But you got to look globally.
Okay.
And we have negative interest rates in Germany and several European countries and Japan.
So they're sold internationally?
Not necessarily. I'm just saying. I'm getting.
Okay.
I'm kind of moving to your answer. The U.S. Treasury is paying 0.25%. A very short term is people are scared of the stock market.
Right.
And it's, you heard the phrase flight to quality probably. The investors will go for safety, and so the treasuries are a safe investment, and that drives the yields down. Now the municipal rates, theoretically they are tax-free, so they should be lower than the treasuries, but they aren't. They aren't right now. They're slightly higher, and they're tax-exempt. So there are lots of insurance companies and bond funds that have cash that they got to invest, and they're afraid to put it in the stock market. That's been up and down significantly. So there's a real demand right now for municipal bonds.
Even though they're only returning this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we're of the mind that we think that's going to continue as long as the COVID problem is there. The Federal Reserve has signaled they're going to do everything they can to keep rates low, but I don't like to take a chance, so we're proposing that we would be ready with your bonds, the first $10 million, at the July 28th meeting, with a settlement August 12th. Was that? I'm getting into some of Brad's material, but
Don't steal his thunder.
So, did I help you with that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, I will get out of the way and let Wesley and Brad take over. And as we said before, please participate, because we would really like you to be comfortable that your financing is going to be handled properly, and that you're satisfied with that when we finish.
Don't doubt that for a moment.
Okay.
Well, good evening. I too want to say congratulations on 2 successful campaigns this spring, considering everything that was going on, election being pushed back 2 months. I mean, that's a great accomplishment for you and your staff and everyone involved. The preliminary analysis we'll go over is the booklet, and if you'll skip right to page 1, past the picture of our company and the map of the state and everything, Exhibit A on page 1. This is the history of your assessed valuation growth, and you can see over the past 5 years it's grown almost 5% each year. In your cash flow projections we do when we project out the payments on the bonds, we have used a slight decrease for next year, a 0.5% decrease based on what Paul told us came from the assessor as of right now. And then after that, we use still a conservative 2% growth in your cash flow projections. But as you can see, historically, for the past 23 years, you've increased about 5% each year. Page 2 is the history of your actual levies. And you can see you've been at the consistent $5.07 for the past 10 to 12 years, all the way since 08, 09. With your 50-cent increase, that's in the incidental fund, and then your debt service fund has the 10% drop. So we haven't done your Form A yet, but these are what you're putting in the ballot, and this is what we will definitely hope we can once we do all the calculations for the tax rate this year.
The proposed levies for 2021 are the yellow shaded.
Yeah, the very top. The next several pages we're going to go through is your current debt and your current situation. Page 3, Schedule 1, is your Series 2014 remaining payments. And this is the series that you approved the 1,220,000 defeasance last spring. So if you can skip over to page 4, this shows when those are callable in 2022, and the actual defeasance schedule is on page 5, and that shows the schedule for the escrow fund, the cash flow on that. And then Schedule 1C on page 6 is the remaining payments after your 1.22 million defeasance. So you can see how much principal is remaining, how much interest, and then the total fiscal year payments are on the far right-hand side.
Just a refresher, a defeasance is essentially just a prepayment of bonds that aren't callable yet, and we did that to be able to keep your debt service levy in place based on the strength of your balances. Your balances were too strong, so we had to prepay some bonds to keep that levy in place for your ballot initiative. And since they weren't callable, it's called a defeasance because we have to set aside an escrow account so that those funds are safe and locked up, so that when that 2022 call date comes, the money's there to make that prepayment to preserve your levy.
Moving on to page 7, Schedule 2 is your Series 2007 refunding bonds. And you can see the $4.4 million in principal remaining, interest, and then your total payments on the right, total yearly payments on the right. And Schedule 2A is the maturity to call schedule, which they are callable in 2024.
These financings were done with your previous underwriter, so their call features are longer than what we typically recommend, but we have to work with what you've got. They're just refreshing your memory briefly as to what you have as existing debt, and then we'll illustrate how we structure the new money around it so that there's no increase in the levy.
And Schedule 3 on page 9 moves away from your debt service fund, and this is your lease purchase. So it's remaining payments for your Series 2016 lease purchase. And that is on page 10, indicates that is callable in 2022. And that is the part that will be prepaid with your new bond issue. And on the far right, you can see the total, physical totals at $290,000 each year. That is the amount that will be freed up once you pay these off that you can use in your operating. So that was part of a big part of your campaign and trying to get more money in your operating. So on page 11 and 12 is the cash flow for your debt service fund. And this does include the defeasance. And at the current situation, you can see that everything in light green is the revenue generated from your, was $1.17 last year, but $1.07 levy from here on out. And on page 12, the dark green column is your total revenue from all your debt service. Then you have your Schedule 1B and Schedule 2 payments. And then the important columns are on the right, or how much money you have left over once you make your payments. And if you'll flip to page 13, we've expanded that so it's easier to see. But you can see from your balances in purple, just take 1920 for example. Once you make the payment in blue, the $1,855,000, you'll have a projected $2,156,000 remaining in your balances. So let's say the purple balances are after you make your payments that year.
And our balances are actually conservative. Working with Kathy and looking at the bank statements, as of the end of May, you actually had about $50,000 more money than this. You actually had about $2.2 million, whereas we're only showing $2,156,000, and projecting out into June from the slides, it could be even more than that. So our numbers are conservative here, and you actually might have more cash than what we're anticipating. But we've already ran the preliminary Form C calculation based on the projected balances, and your debt service levies in good shape, taking into account the upcoming payments on the new bonds. It's about a 13-cent rollback from where the calculation for the state auditor comes to versus going to the $1.07 that was in the ballot language. So we're in good shape.
Help me understand, the pink column, you're showing that debt service account balance is going to increase throughout the snapshot you've got there. It's going to go from,
This is your current situation before we add the new debt to it.
well, I'm just trying to wrap my head around, you're telling me by this presentation, this particular page, that 2026, 2027, you're showing $9 million in the debt service account?
That's what would be there if you didn't have new debt.
Okay.
And the state
Okay.
auditor would allow it. But what-
Well, I knew from a state auditor standpoint that
Yeah,
would be.
what this does is it's a model that says this district can issue new bonds without raising taxes. Then we find out what's your limit, how big is your project, and you go through the process that you did to come up with the $22,700,000. So this is just, we plowed this ground before, which just to reinforce the fact that what led to the conclusion that you could have a no tax increase issue for as much as $22,700,000.
Any other questions about your current situation before we tackle the options for your new money? Okay, I'll turn this over to Brad.
And so now we have the numbers that were forwarded earlier for your board packets last week. We've went ahead and shown the two ways to go about it, and we actually included the legal size sheet of paper as a summary to compare the two ideas. The first schedule on Schedule 3 would be assuming all of the bonds are issued at one time, $22,700,000. And so we did this structure and then used the same parameters of this principle if we had issued it all at once to determine how to structure it, to split it into bank qualified increments, as Larry mentioned, of $10 million or less each year, but with a similar maturity schedule to this, to see the benefits of how much less interest expense it can be. When we issue it all at once, we start the clock on paying all of the interest on all $22,700,000 versus if we issue $10 million now, because that's about how much you can spend in a given calendar year, then we can come back and issue the next $10 million in April so that we're not paying interest on all $22,700,000. So on page 3, we have all of it at once. The total interest expense, if all of it were issued at one time, is $15,529,750. The principal is structured to start in 2028 after your other bonds are paid off and go through 2040 as a 20-year financing. Then we'll turn, so you'll notice the coupon rate is 2% on the first two maturities and then 5% on the maturities 2030 to 2040. Those bonds are being sold at a premium, which is specified on page 15. So the first two maturities at 2% would be the $2,700,000 that would prepay the $2,060,000 callable lease in 2022, and it would have some extra funds left over. But then the rest of the bonds, 2030 to 2040, are 5% interest rates with a yield to the 5-year call date of 1.6%. And Larry can speak that that 1.6% yield is even higher than where we're actually placing bonds for school districts in the state currently. We could do much lower than that. In the 20-year piece in 2040, we've been at 1.4%, 1.35%. So these rates are fairly conservative. To the right of the yield columns of 2% and 1.6%, we have the maturity value, which is the amount the school would repay, the $22,700,000. But then you'll notice under the price column, the prices are 115%. Since 5% is a higher interest rate than what's available in the municipal bond market, the investors are paying that price above 100% to effectively buy that 5% interest rate from the school. So that's where the yield to the call of 1.6% comes in. If we're able to refinance or prepay these bonds within 1 year, factoring in that premium the investor pays, your effective interest rate is just 1.6%. To the right of that price column, the YTM column, would be the worst case scenario column. If you're never able to refinance or prepay the bonds, factoring in the premium the investor pays, your effective interest rate is 3.168% to 3.892% on the bonds. So the dollar price column is the maturity value column times the price column, which totals $25,719,400. So subtracting the maturity value the school pays versus the dollar price the investor pays, we get under bid information, the second item, reoffering premium or discount. The total premium the investor is paying is $3,019,400. So they're paying the district $3 million to get that 5% interest rate. And the reason for that is, as Larry showed on those slides, since we're at all-time historic lows with that 10-year note below 1%, on a 20-year financing, if rates were to stabilize over the next 3, 5, 6, 7 years, banks are one of the main purchasers of school bonds. If the rates rise back to more normal levels, the banks would have a large unrealized loss on their books if they had just bought it at 1.6%. And a few years from now, school bonds are going at 3 or 4%, and they needed, if loan demand increased at the bank and they wanted to sell the bonds to have more money available for loans in their community, an investor would say, why would I want your 1.6% bond when all the bonds now are 4%? So they buy that 5% interest rate to insulate them if rates rise.
Just interject that 25, when we sell them all at once, that was to make sure that the district could handle the full bond issue amount without raising the levy. It wasn't the optimal structure, but it's one to compare so you can see why it might make sense to split them up. But just with this example, we've got $3,019,000 potentially to go towards your projects, which would be probably once the bids come in, you'll see that will be useful because a lot of the bids are coming in above the architect's estimates presently. If it turns out that you don't need all of the premium for your projects, that when the projects are finished, it can be transferred to the debt service fund and used to pay the bonds off early at the call date. So it can benefit you both ways. It's a cushion if you need it, and it also is an aid in marketing the bonds in today's environment. Because the question you asked, well, who's going to buy these? Well, when we sell them at 5% with low yields, there are more buyers there than they would be if we were selling everything at par, because the par rates are so low right now, and there aren't a lot of investors who want those.
So let me ask you this: what is the difference between doing it all at once or the three staggered? You have both scenarios going on. Is it more expensive for us to do it staggered because of expenses?
Let me let Brad share that with you because he did the work on it. So.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue. So that's essentially what we've highlighted on the executive summary. So the first row is all at once, as Larry mentioned, just to make sure how to structure the bonds to fit within your levy as a no tax increase. And so the total interest expense for all at once is $15,529,750 in the first row, about the fourth column in from the left-hand side of the page. Then we've got the interest expense if we do instead $10 million this year, then $10 million in April of next year, and then the remaining $2,700,000 in January of 2022. And so when we add up the interest expense by splitting it out, that interest expense totals $15,094,994. So by splitting it, you save $434,756,000 of interest expense. So about $70,000 less than $500,000 less interest expense by splitting them.
And as far as expense besides interest, I think was my question.
So
your question.
Yes.
The costs of issuance.
The extra cost is $14,400. See that red number?
Yes. So that's how much the cost.
That's how much the costs are
to
higher
break it down
because you split it up 3 times. Because
that was my question.
We do have some expenses that are. If it was all at once, it'd only be one time. But if you do it 3 times, you've got some duplication of expenses, and that's
Okay.
what that totals up. Good question.
Yep.
Can I interrupt real quick? On page 9, schedule 3, up at the top, it says we're rated on an A+, but on page 14, schedule 3, we're a double A+.
Yep. And that's because on page 9, the A+ is for the district's lease financing, which is an independent rating specifically on the school district itself, whereas the general obligation bonds participate in the Missouri Direct Deposit Program, where the state aid is intercepted to go straight to the bond payments, and the AA+ rating is for that direct deposit intercept program that the district participates in. And so that is free, but on a lease financing, when you go through the specific rating process for the district, you have to actually pay a separate fee for that. So it goes back to...
But our bond rating hasn't decreased.
No.
We're still AA+. Okay.
He was asking about earlier on the fund balances. If you'll go to page
Page 26.
Is that what's in the
27.
I want the
27 is the enlarged one.
Yeah, 27. This is those balances after you put $22,700,000 of new debt. So you can see, if you look at page 27 versus the first one on page 18. Is that right, Grant?
Or page 13.
13. You can see how they've got those balances in purple have gone way down because of the new debt. 26, 27, before it was 9 million.
Gotcha.
Now it's
2.3. Okay. Yep.
That's because of the interest on
Yep.
22 million,
Okay.
700,000. So, we've taken more time than we that selling them all at once because that's not the recommended way. So can we briefly go into the 210 million pieces? And,
So on the executive summary, in addition to $434,000 less interest expense by splitting them, we're also able to generate $3,110,100 of premium versus all at once only $3,019,400. So we generated an additional $90,700 of premium for your projects. The next column to the right was the estimated cost of issuance, which, splitting them in 3 installments, as Larry noted, we have duplicate state auditor fees and some other ones that total $14,400. Then we have projected net proceeds available for construction by splitting them $25,504,800. So $90,000 more premium, but backing off the $14,400 cost of issuance, you end up at $76,300 more by splitting them. And so then of the $25,504,800, about $2,060,000 of that would be earmarked to prepay the lease financing. But overall, $434,000 less interest expense by splitting them, $90,000 more premium, $14,400 more cost of issuance. So overall, it seems very beneficial to split them up and reduce your interest expense and increase your premium and proceeds available for construction.
go to spreadsheet 8, I believe is that the one.
Spreadsheet 8 would be, we also ran numbers on if we were able to refinance out of the 5% interest rate on the 5-year call date. And so we're anticipating it would save about $4,600,000 of interest expense. And so those balances are graphed on page 34 as the blown up schedule. So looking out in 2039-40, your balance grows in the last year of this financing to $19,827,000. versus on page 27, assuming we never refinance, that balance grows to $14,839,000. So the 4.6 to million or so refunding savings just pads those balances and makes them very healthy again, to where you'd be in a position, as we noted earlier with the state auditor's Form C calculation, you wouldn't ever actually be able to grow to $9 million of balance versus only 2 or 3 million of payments, or 14 or 19. That's what indicates that you have to start prepaying bonds, or that you're in a great position for a no tax increase proposal with your current levy, which is that first spreadsheet we graphed. When the balance grew to 9 million, that's where we knew you were in this position to be able to issue the $22,700,000 actually as a 10-cent levy decrease, dropping your levy in your debt service fund from $1.17 to $1.07, with just that 2% growth in assessed valuation easily accommodates these payments.
If you are on page 34 still, the 25-26 value, projected balance of $2,556,654, and the year after, right in there, you'll be in a position for major new money without raising taxes again. So this is
7 years.
by keeping the debt service levy constant and paying off the debt as fast as you can, this will give you the ability to have a fairly efficient long-range plan where you can you're going to take 2 or 3 years to get all these improvements made that were on this ballot. Then you'll have a couple years, 3 years to see what else do we need to do, and the bonding capacity will be growing in the meantime, and you'll be back in position where, like we were this year, where you could ask for probably close to your bonding limit, legal limit, without raising taxes. Now, you have to have a project for it. I'm not saying it's on.
We're not going to make one up.
Yeah, no, but that doesn't seem to be difficult when we look at around the state at all the needs and the buildings that are having, and all the improvements in how they educate, the fine arts centers, and many different types of projects that schools have that can get them passed. So we've gone through the splitting them into 3 and potentially refinancing that. The refinancing is, we're using an assumed rate of 2.5% on the refunding bonds, and that's probably higher than it would be today. We don't know in 5 years what the rate will be, but that savings of potentially $4.6 million is probably, in today's assumptions, it's a realistic one. It's conservative, not overly conservative though. But if rates are up and they don't go down right away, we still are okay without having to raise the levy. That's what we looked at earlier. Have we?
Yes.
Yes.
No, you've given us good information. No, very good information.
So the assumption
You're in a real good spot, and what we're trying to do as your underwriters is help you stay there.
Yeah.
And help you. Right now, we would think one of the most important things is to complete the projects that were on the ballot. And one of the mysteries there, how much is it really going to cost?
Right.
So the first $10 million will give you how much premium, Brad?
$1,509,700.
So you take your bids, say December, January timeframe. Is that a possibility, Paul?
Hopefully sooner.
Hopefully. So let's say your bids come in right on target, and we had $1.9 million extra on the first $10 million. The second $10 million, if you don't feel you need the premium, we can market them without it, or with a much lesser premium. But if the bids come in $2 or $3 million over, you say, well, we've still got the other 10 million, we're gonna get that premium, we can probably still go ahead with most of these things. So, that's what we're trying to have the financing enable you to do. And give you an exit if, so you can pay them off early through a refinancing at better rates when, in the future, when that market comes about.
We like options.
Sure.
It's great.
So the estimated refunding savings, walk me through that, how you're calculating that again, what that.
Sure. That would be assuming a December 2024 close, so they're within 90 days of the March 1st, 2025 call date, and it's refunding the 5% premium bonds to 2.5% and recognizing savings as a result of essentially cutting your interest rate in half. And so in doing that, you'll notice it's on the far right-hand side column, $3,099,000 on the first $10 million issuance, $1,501,000 on the second $10 million issuance, and then nothing on the third installment because we have those $2,700,000 just at a 2% interest rate, and that's the one that prepays the
Your
lease.
projections use a 5% number throughout the horizon, but you're saying at the end of that call window, that 5-year
Within
period.
5 years, we switch from 5% down to 2.5%. So 5% for the first 5 years, and then 2.5% for the next 15 years instead of continuing at 5%.
As far as refinancing or rewriting those bonds, do we have to get approval for that, or can that be just?
You as the board.
The board
Yeah,
has
the
to
board
approve it.
action.
Okay.
And so the bonds, the investors know that they have the 5-year call feature in there, and so it just requires 30 days notice, which would be issued before the March 1st, 2025 call date. So the investors are aware that refunding is a possibility 5 years down the road.
And that's
if the
at
rates
your
hold
option.
up.
If it's beneficial for the district, you do it. If it's not, you don't.
Okay. Other questions?
What we would like to have is your direction to proceed with the first 10 million, have it ready for approval at the July 28th meeting. We would probably sell the bonds or start marketing to local banks about a week before the 28th, so that all local banks who want to buy them have a chance to. These are longer bonds than normal for the bank. Banks are typically 15 years or less, and these are, the first one is
20 years, all 36, 40.
15 to 20 year piece. Is that what it is?
That's right.
So we'll show them locally, but we're not expecting high participation. Now in 2021 and the 22s, the 22s might be also locally, and the 21s might be, you might have strong participation there as well. But
So what you need from us?
They will get an opportunity, is what we're saying, prior to the 28th, so we'll be able to tell you, we offered them locally, we have this much committed from this bank or that bank.
So what you need tonight is a consensus as to which approach to begin preparing documents to come back to us on.
Right.
Either fund completely or the 3 tranches.
Sure.
Board consensus?
Well, we'll need a motion.
We're just we're not taking official action. Here's the direction we want them to go, to bring us a proposal that we can then act on.
You'll act at the next meeting.
We'll act
And they
at the
bring it to.
They don't actually
We
have.
won't be selling anything before our next meeting.
We'll be getting pre-sale commitments. So
They'll
we
test
can
the
give you
waters
a firm
to see
rate.
what.
Okay.
We'll give you a firm rate. It's up to you to accept it or not, though.
Gotcha.
28. So
Gotcha.
Our decision tonight needs to be either one lump
One or the
sum
3.
or 3.
I think the 3, don't we? Because if we can hold off, we're not paying the interest.
We're all
to
nodding
it
our
makes no
heads.
sense.
The 3.
So it looks like the 3 tranche piece would be the approach to it.
And because if you've already said what we want to hear, basically, but the interest rate earnings during construction, because of those low levels, is going to be minimal. So that's another reason why you phase it in. Another reason besides that is that financing then can catch up with the project. If the project bids are real strong, you won't need as much premium as in the second one as we were predicting tonight.
Very good.
Appreciate your patience.
You have our consensus.
It's fun to present to you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
A lot of work.
You guys can stay for the rest of the meeting if you want to.
Yeah, don't you want to stay?
I don't think they're going to take us up on that.
Cameron volunteered to be
Okay.
some of those finance committees.
Sign me up.
Well, was it, Brad?
Good night, thank you.
Your
St. Louis,
wheelhouse.
2 of them. Next item on the agenda is 7I.
Bye.
Make sure. Yep, 7I, team sports and girls swimming. This is an information discussion item.
Jay. Me and Jay.
Well, it's Jay when we updated. He's got it printed.
You didn't refresh, Doug.
He's going off printed copy.
Hard copy, I can't refresh.
Aha, all right.
Printing.
This way I know what has to have
The back.
a roll call vote or just a straight vote, so my cheat sheet.
So we're going to discuss this.
I would like to make a motion to reinstate the C-team sports and girls swimming for
This
the
is-
20.
This is information, it's not
Information discussion,
action.
there's no actual motion posted.
It's just information at this point.
I can make a motion at any time.
Okay, make a motion.
Yeah.
Okay, state it again.
Make the motion that we reinstate the C-team sports and girls swimming.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second? No second? Going once? Going twice? Motion dies for lack of a second. Okay. Next would be 7, I'm not sure what letter it is.
You're on
Okay, community partnership with Cass Career Center.
You can go back if you want to discuss.
Well, I do have a question related to Jay. I thought you were going to bring that back up. Just on discussion, not on there. Is there, I mean, I know it was a big discussion and it was not, in my understanding, it was not part of our levy bond, any of that. That was all for salaries, totally associated with that. But with Brent here, and on the C team, I was just wanting to check to see roughly about how many kids that was going. I couldn't recall how many kids that affected, and I wasn't at the last meeting, wasn't able to attend in on that. So if I missed out on some other discussion on that, then I apologize. But if there was, I'd still like a little information related to the C team. I do kind of recall that the girls swim team was about, 10 girls?
Yeah, they've averaged 12 to 13 over the
Okay.
past 5 years, I believe. And those are unique individuals, I guess, if you will, except for one, I believe, this past year anyway, meaning that they didn't participate in other activities, if that makes sense. As far as C team goes, in total, it's going to be around 60 some kids across all sports, again, unique individuals.
So we can record, so we can pick it
Yeah,
up.
it won't
Okay.
pick it up on the recording.
Girls swim again, average about 12 to 13 over the past 5 years, I believe. And again, most of those, that was the only activity that they participated in. There was one or two, I think, that had participated in multiple activities. As far as C team goes, probably affects across all sports. It's around 60-ish. Most of those, I can't remember off the top of my head, but 45 to 50 of them were the same individuals, though, that participated in multiple events, if that makes sense. So if a volleyball girl played, if a girl played volleyball, she also played basketball, so it wasn't a total of 60. It was just if you added up those rosters together, it would have been 60. So we're probably looking at 35 to 40 unique individuals that it would affect.
And then also, and I apologize, trying to refresh some of this. We're the only school around. Are we the only school in our conference that had swimming? Because we don't. It's not a conference. Sport,
Correct. Well, there's only one other school. Warrensburg was the only school in our conference that offers swim. So with only 2 schools, it is not recognized as a conference sport.
Right.
I will say I tried to reach out for as far as this sport goes to co-op. You know, we allow we co-op at the middle school level with East Lynn, and well, there used to be the Christian school. I seeked out that opportunity so our girls could still have that opportunity. It has to be an adjoining school district in order for that to occur. The only 2 schools that we adjoin with district boundary-wise that offer swim was Ray Peck and Belton, and they both declined to allow that to happen.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it for me.
Good to move forward, or
What's that?
we good to move forward?
Yep.
Okay.
Things over.
7K,
Okay.
community partnership with Cass Career Center. Discussions on this? It's an
It's
information
information.
item, so,
So that was who we heard from earlier. Mhm.
board thoughts.
I'm concerned that it's just to use the kids for labor, to build some houses and get some money.
Personally, I think it's to me, it's a white paper, if you will, a position statement. Here's what he'd like to do, but there's no flesh on it. There's no details on it. I'm like Bing. I want to know what are the numbers, what do the dollars and cents look like, what's the expected expectation. Have they had discussions with the city as far as zoning? Because I think in some of the discussion they talk about Section 8 housing. I don't know if that discussion's, if we're trying to put these type of properties next to traditional houses around the Career Center, I think you've got probably some big work to do from that standpoint. So to me, it's an idea, but that's the extent of it. We don't have anything to really consider at this point. Now,
We definitely need some new housing in our district if we want it to grow.
don't
So
disagree.
I appreciate that. I just don't know if that's the end. I just don't know.
And there's really nothing stopping him if he wants to do that, other than going to the city and getting the permits,
Yep.
that he can have these constructed on his own.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, I appreciate the willingness to involve the kids, but I just don't know.
We don't know the details.
Right.
Yeah. And then you can also, if we do that, Paul, how does that affect?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about how it would affect our kids. So first of all, you're taking kids to a job site, so there's time lost in transportation that we have limited time anyways. You're talking about weather factors. When we build our tiny houses in a shop, we don't ever have to worry about the weather. If you take them to a job site, you're prohibited by weather factors. Those are just a
About
couple.
supervision.
There's a
Supervision's an
liability
issue.
factor.
You're away from the office, so you're away from administration. You're taking one supervisor with a multitude of kids. Something happens. I mean, there's a lot of concerns that we had, and so
And we
We have some districts that do that. Through
we used to do it.
We used to.
We used to do it.
And there is a lot of valuable skill,
Right.
and I totally agree with that. But also, we're in such a litigious society. Just some part of me says it increases our exposure, and I hate that. I don't like that aspect. But I don't know. That's just some of the things I was thinking about. But yet I'm like, we need to do something to get some housing. at
Well, I don't
times.
think,
in conversations that you've had, and maybe Jeanette had with him, have
We'll come up to
Come on down, Jim.
Since I made Brent come up, in conversations that you had with the individual, were some of our questions addressed? Did you hear concerns, and were they answered, or?
I shared many concerns, and one of the things I asked was how would it benefit our students more than what they already get? Because they already get exposure to electricians and plumbing and building from the ground up and all that. So to me it was, what do you offer that they don't? And he said, well, he was a teacher kind of in the past, and the other gentleman has worked with kids before and all. We have a certified teacher who's gone through, and he's an NCCER master teacher in construction. So I don't see what the benefit would be to the kids. I'm number one big fan of working with the community, doing things for the community. Love to find ways to plug our kids into the community. But the concerns I had, and a lot of the answers that I'll throw something, obviously my husband's in construction. He'd love to have free labor come and do some things for him, So one of the things I proposed to him is, how do we select you and not any of the other builders in this town who would love to have the benefit of these kids come and learn under their. So how do we choose that? Is it a lottery system? Is it because you came and asked me today? There's all kinds of complications I see with it. Yes, I'd love to find a way to partner with the city and do some wonderful things. To me, some of the veteran homes that they're doing in some of the other communities, I've looked into trying to figure out how we could get something like that going, where there's a specific cause, not one person benefiting. So just my thoughts.
Good. Thank you. We want from us just a.
It's no vote, so it's just information.
We'll allow him to come back and I guess either pose questions or bring us more information, more detail, if he wants us to consider further.
Well, or we could say we don't want to consider it further. Don't come back.
Do we have a consensus?
I don't think it would be in the district's best interest at this time to entertain that sort of thing.
Consensus would be not interested at this time?
Correct.
I would say.
Yes.
Okay. That give you enough?
It does, so if he comes and requests, I can save it.
Okay.
I mean, to me, it's not off the board. It's just not at this time for us.
Works for me. We'll pass that consensus on if he follows up with you then. Next item is 7L, House Bill 1854. It's a resolution. It will be a roll call vote. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the resolution for House Bill 1854 as presented.
Second?
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion on this?
Well, this is a resolution to request that Governor Parsons veto House Bill 1854 based on the fact that it limits the amount of time that people can sign up to be a school board member. We have a lot of concerns about that, and MSBA shared those, I think, with you all. Did an excellent job of portraying our concerns. So
What I didn't understand about this at all is that this this bill only affects Kansas City School District. It's just so isolated for that, and that's not how this bill was presented to start with at all. So, I'm all in favor of this resolution, but it's very bizarre. The whole bill
I
is
think it was
bizarre.
one of those that they just, at the end, just started dumping stuff.
Oh, yeah,
online.
obviously.
That's exactly what happened.
It morphed into.
Are they still
Nonsense.
pushing for moving the elections, the local elections to November as well? Did something slide through this session?
I don't think it was part of this.
I had
Bing
mentioned that.
heard something, and
That was on like levy increases, not for elections. But at one time, there was a representative out of Blue Springs, I believe, trying to push
Senator-
school board elections into November. But,
Senator Emery wanted that.
and I think he was supporting it on the Senate side. But what he had mentioned to me was that levy increases would be pushed to November now, and they couldn't be put on, an April or June low turnout ballot. But for some reason, I can't get that bill number from him. So I don't
I
know
haven't seen
why.
that either.
Well,
And the lobbyist for MSBA didn't seem to know where it was
Well,
stuck,
and I was gonna
but
say
it's
on
been
the- on the-
pigeonholed somewhere.
on the Zoom conference call last week, or the conference that I attended that way, they asked the same question. They were trying to find it, and the lobbyist was supposed to be going to look for it and get back to us, and I haven't seen anything more on that. So, okay. Any further discussion on this item? Ready to call the roll?
Yes. Doug A.
Yes.
Cameron.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Brittany. Yes. Nancy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now your numbers should be right.
Item 8A, revision of the 2020-2021 District LPN Registered Nurse Salary Schedule. This is an action. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the revisions in the 2021 District LPN Registered Nurse Salary Schedule as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion?
This is just a revision, just a calculation error that was made on the original presentation, so we wanted to update that, make sure it reflected the correct hours. It was an issue on the hours side, so.
Any questions from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. Item 8B, revision of the 2020-2021 substitute teacher pay schedule. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the revisions to the 2021 substitute teacher pay schedule as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion?
This was just a division issue on the $100 per day divided out per hour, just making sure the per hour rate was correct to correlate with the $100 a day. So.
Any comments? Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Item 8C, set credit limit for superintendent. This is an action. Do we have a motion?
Move to set the credit limit for the superintendent as $10,000.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions? Discussion?
I actually think the limit's too low. I know that there's not a high, percentage that it would go up, but I just, you've got 7 different buildings, and I just would like to see Paul have a higher limit just for any kind of emergency.
Do we have any sense usage amounts or?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
That all out. The highest
I think
it's
it was
ever
like
been was
3,500 or
37.
3,700 in a month. But
Your thought,
I just,
since you're the one in charge?
I don't use it other than going to Merle's.
You spend $10,000 at Merle.
Yeah,
Got some problems.
We got bigger issues than the credit limit.
Yeah.
If it ever becomes an issue, Kathy can go in and bump it up for a one-time use, so it's not.
Okay, so we do have.
It's effective immediately, there's no wait.
Okay. So we do
you can
have.
bump it up.
If
we
it's
have
a true
safety
emergency,
valve.
don't we have a clause in there that we can call couldn't we make some special notification concession based on a true emergency with the board?
It's with the new policy service that goes into place. It's really not even been in our existing policies. It's just with Ed Council policies. It's something that they put in their governance process.
So again, if we've got the opportunity to bump it if we run into an emergency, are we comfortable that covers us then?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Make sure I'm in the right place here.
Budget
Tired?
amendment?
No, I just want to make sure that I'm not.
You're on the right one.
9A, 2019-20 budget amendment and resolution. This will be a roll call vote. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the budget amendment to adjust the expenditure appropriations budget as presented and to approve a resolution authorizing a transfer from the General Fund 01 to the Special Revenue Fund 02 in the amount necessary to eliminate a Special Revenue Fund or Teachers Fund deficit estimated at $2.6 million.
Second.
Didn't even have my glasses.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion or questions?
Oh, Kathy, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking care of this.
Hearing no questions, call the roll.
Nancy?
Yes.
Brittany? Yes. Doug?
Yes.
Cameron?
Yes.
Doug A?
Yes.
Bing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, 9B, 2020-2021 budget adoption. This is an action item. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the 2020-2021 budget as presented.
Second.
We're all
We have a
ready to
motion in
sign.
3
Down
seconds.
here.
Cameron.
Questions or discussions on this? I think we had the presentation earlier through the hearing. They may have questions since then. This is just a straight approval, right?
Yes.
Hearing no questions, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 9C, bids for fuel for 2020-2021. This is an action item. Do we have a motion?
Move to accept the bid for fuel products as specified to MFA Oil Company for the 2020-21 school year based on the pricing provided.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussions? Questions?
I had asked a question earlier about the pricing. It's a per day price. If it's a per day price, why are we getting a bid for it? I mean, if it's going to change, tomorrow's going to be $1.50, but we bid at $1.34. What's the difference on getting the bid? I don't.
You have to have someone bring in that tanker to fill up for the diesel down at the bus barn. So you want to be able to call somebody and have them come. You don't want to have to call around and get a bid each time that you want your,
So we're locked in.
things filled down there.
No, we're not locked in. We're not locked into this price.
No,
Right.
they're not going to block in for a yearly rate.
No.
Mm-mm.
And nobody does that.
No one does that.
Unless you have a tank to store the fuel, we don't.
For a
so,
year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the reason why, is so that they can go and get it when they want it, and not have to have a bid each time.
Correct. Yeah, you would not want to weekly, or however long it takes to empty that tank out there, to go out and call for bids daily.
Okay, so if the price went down, we would still get the lower price.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Right.
We're just making a decision on the supplier's offer
But
today
Correct.
as
Correct.
to, and look at the relationship.
That's what my thought was,
Right,
too.
and as being as far out of the Kansas City area as we are, we're lucky to have gotten 2 bids. Normally, we just get the one. No one can go deliver outside, or we're outside most of them's delivery area. We did get John Moore to bid this time, and he's out of Blue Springs, but he doesn't have the capability to provide that tank that's out there now, because that tank would go if MFA was no longer our
So
plan.
MFA has provided the
Yes.
tank as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passed. 9D, Booster Club contract. This is an action item. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the contract as presented between the Harrisonville Booster Club Incorporated and the Harrisonville Cass R9 School District for the lease of a 1997 Prevost 58-seat bus for transportation of students on district-sponsored extracurricular trips for the 1-year period ending June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
It's just one bus this year, so just so everybody's aware of that. We've been running 2, but the one is beyond repair, so the Booster Club is just leasing one too.
Can the Career Center fix it?
They don't do diesel.
Oh.
So.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Item 9E, Church and Dwight Memorandum of Understanding. This is an action item. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with Church and Dwight as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Are there any questions?
This is a good example of a partnership that we are forming with a community employer, one of our biggest employers. That in meeting with them the last couple of years, and this is something that they have a demand for is they have employees who don't have a high school diploma. So in order to get them on as full-time employees, they have to have the equivalency. So this would enable that to happen. So it's a good.
Yeah, if legal, take a look at the agreement. Good.
Yes.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 9F, Hollis and Miller contract. This is an action item. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the Hollis and Miller contract as presented.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Questions, concerns?
Yeah, so Nancy and I talked today, and I appreciate Nancy looked over this in detail. There's a couple items on there that we were able to make some provisions for local people. So if you go to it's item 1, Article 1, it talks about land surveyor. So we changed the land surveyor to be a local land surveyor. Nancy had concern about civil, but then we contacted that individual. They don't provide that service. So, but there were just a couple changes in there to that. So, and I talked to John Brown. He said we can just strike through that, and they'll make those changes.
Do we need the motion to be as amended then?
Probably.
And was it in section, what was it, 14, I believe? So this is where Hollis and Miller are going to help us search for the construction manager. Is that, did I see that in there? That's part of their.
They've provided some documentation with that process. So they provided us a rubric, a scoring guide that we can use. It's not an official document that we have to use, but it's a good resource. And then they provided a framework for an RFQ, which we'll send out tomorrow. So and advertise for a couple of weeks.
So we need a motion adjusted.
Just to approve the contract as amended would be great if we could do that. Okay.
Sorry, I should have given you that information prior. I apologize.
Okay, seconding the amended.
Move to approve the contract as amended.
Okay.
Sure to go.
Everyone's second with that.
Yep.
So.
Any further discussions? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
On page 13 of the contract, it lists something about measured drawings that would be extra cost, and I'm curious what those measured drawings are.
I don't know.
It says it's our responsibility to provide the measured drawings.
4.1.
What is that?
What page are we on?
You think that's supplemental services?
Yes.
Great.
Come here. Get up.
They're not Hollis and
Yeah,
Miller.
Well, where's Hollis and Miller?
They're not here.
They're not here? Oh my gosh. All right. So who are you?
Plead the fifth.
Prospective construction managers.
Oh. Really? So do you know what measured drawings are?
Well, go to that article that you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
It's on page 13.
Yes, it's on page 13.
The
It's
number-
called
the article difference.
supplemental services, and
In a
who
grid.
provides?
Article 4
Grid chart.
Article 4.
or 3?
Yes. It's under 4.
4.1.1.4.
Yeah.
It's in a grid.
Or, one
But it's on page 13, Kathy.
This grid
Yeah, I'm
right
on
here.
page 13.
Right there.
Right there.
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay.
There you are.
The number 4 item at owners.
Shouldn't they be here?
Measured drawings.
Could you show me that article 4.1.1.4?
Stop. It's right up there at the top, isn't it?
Yeah, I see that come there.
You want point 4?
It's down below.
Nope, it's just part of that article there.
Yes.
Well, Measure, you want me to really comment on that?
Yes.
Okay.
Who else is going to tell us?
Yeah. So if they're making, if this is modifications to an existing building, you could pay the architect to come out and field measure every single dimension that they're going to put on the drawings, okay? Which is really not necessary. They should be able to take the original drawings that the project was built from and use those dimensions. And they'll have a note on there that will require us, the construction manager, to field verify and confirm dimensions that are important for the construction of the project.
Okay, so for any of the projects that are about a building itself, we'd have to dig up the original plans somewhere
Yeah.
and provide them to the architect.
Or they'll do the necessary field measurements where the connections are required to be tied in, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
I would not be worried about that clause.
I was just curious because I had no idea what that was. I just wanted to know what it meant.
Great
But that's not my only question. Why aren't they here? Paul? Why aren't they here?
Probably because we ran it through the legal and they said it was fine. We went through it 3 times, so.
Pass it to Nancy.
Well, if you're going to get awarded a contract, I think you'd want to. Because I have questions about the reimbursable expenses, and I know these guys can't answer that. So there were quite a few reimbursable expenses that I don't feel like we should have to pay.
If you would like to talk to them, I can have them here. I didn't ask them to be here, so I'd be glad to do that. I did talk to John today, and they had another meeting this evening. They couldn't be here.
Okay. Well, I just feel like we should get the best bang for our buck. And there's a lot of wordage about insurance that got changed around a lot, as far as them providing as far as the architect providing insurance to us as the owner. And I didn't see any mention of work comp. I did see where they changed the wording for liability to where they wanted the construction manager to be, have them be additional insured, the architect. But as far as for us, for the architect to give us liability insurance, it was very confusing to me. I couldn't tell what the final paragraph was because one had been marked out, and then if you scroll through all the way to the end of the contract, there was a bunch of verbiage about insurance.
Well, again, Nancy, the only thing I can tell you is this is not my area of expertise. That's why I turned it over to the legal team, and they said this is what they recommend. So they did make a lot of changes to it.
Well, what about the reimbursable expenses? Is there any way we can change any of that?
That'd be negotiable.
I think it should be.
We can always table it and request their presence.
Well, I don't know if time is of the essence for this, but I would like to know why we have to pay for postage stamps when we're paying them buku money to do this project for us. Just saying. It's just me.
Amend the motion to table till next month.
Is there a time constraint on this, Paul?
Well, the longer we take, the longer it's going to take for construction to start. So, it's going to drag everything out.
So we're trying to have a special meeting between now and then?
You could.
You got your punch list of things that you have concern
I have
about?
my notes here. Yeah. It's basically the reimbursables that I'm thinking about.
That's all negotiable. Reimbursables are all.
What do you guys, don't let me, what do you guys think?
I would support having a special meeting.
You think we'll make any headway with it? Is it worth asking about?
If they don't do what we agree, we find a new architect.
Oh,
It's
well,
just
I don't
that
think we'll
saying.
go that far.
That's the question I have. Is that a hill we want to die on? Because,
Well,
I think I just think our community is ready to go, and I think it's just talking to Dwayne. It's a pretty standard.
That's a hill you don't want to die on.
No, I don't want to die on it. I just wanted to offer it up as a possible negotiating point. Mayor. I just have to say my piece because this kind of stuff, you know how I am.
That's,
We appreciate
I have no issue
what's
with
wrong
that.
with it,
I just
Nancy?
don't want to be sure.
That's why you have
Nothing
7
wrong with it at
people, so, yeah. I appreciate
That's
you.
what makes us a good
With it a lot
board.
more than I do, so.
Everybody has.
Oh, well, thanks. It's okay. I don't want to hold up things, but I do want to make sure that Bauer's name gets in the contract.
Yeah. And it will. So.
That was my biggest one.
Okay. You're comfortable if we move forward?
Yeah,
Okay. You can tell them the next time you see them.
I will. I
I
will.
have no doubt. Other questions or
Once we
discussions?
vote yes, though, then
I
we're
know.
not
It's fine. It's all right.
coming back to the
It's fine.
reimbursables.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? What is that?
Fireworks, apparently.
Breaking the law.
I don't live in town, so I didn't know what it was either.
Hearing no other comments, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
I know you were a
Aye.
little nervous, weren't you?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
Okay.
Just the one, Nancy,
Yep.
you voted for? Okay.
Item 10A.
What? Oh. I moved to adjourn the meeting.
I like that.
At 9:12. Second.
We have a motion, and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? We're adjourned.